You're joining us for another episode of College Talks and More, brought to you by MyBookCart.com. This series brings together students, parents, and professionals sharing their voices on a variety of college and life topics.
It's all about students, parents, and all of our listeners finding the information, encouragement, and thrive they need for a successful college and life experience.
Welcome to College Talks and More with your hosts, Hanna
and Cari.
We would like to welcome Greg Frisbee from the Frisbee Show, an entertainer who likes to give comedy, entertainment, a new spin. His exciting, inventive, and fun show has been honed for more than 20 years of experience at international fairs, festivals, cruise ships, colleges, and corporate events.
I can honestly say that I've had the pleasure of seeing Greg's juggling skills in action long before he was getting paid to perform. Although back then he wasn't playing with fire yet. As I can imagine, being in the entertainment industry must have its ups and downs. Today we jump into that and discuss it more with Greg. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little more about your college and professional background?
Sure thing. Greg Frisbee here. I perform a comedy variety show called The Rubber Chicken Show or The Greg Frisbee Show. And yeah, my background, I grew up in Massachusetts. And when I graduated high school, I was a fairly shy kid. And I started off going to a community college, which is where I made a bunch of friends and kind of started to explore this juggling, magic, and variety performing world as I kind of emerged from the shell that I was in from growing up. Yeah, so that's kind of how it started out.
Juggling rubber chickens isn't something that most people usually get into. How and why did you start juggling?
I started off as a kid. I was a pretty shy kid growing up. And so before I even started juggling, I started doing magic. And I would do close-up magic for my friends and my family. It was kind of a fun hobby to kind of have on my own. And then when I graduated high school, I saw my first street performers in Boston. And there was some sort of calling to that where I said, I'd like to try that. I'd like to try performing. Even though I was this shy kid, I said, I'm going to go out on the streets of Boston and I'm going to try to do some magic. From there, when I was doing close-up magic, I saw jugglers, puppeteers, fire eaters, rope walkers, the whole gamut out there. And I said, I want to learn how to do those things. I don't want to just do the close-up magic. I want to learn how to juggle. And so I spent a couple summers kind of learning how to juggle and eat fire and started to explore this avenue of like, oh, there's something about this that I really am resonating with and I want to figure this out. And that's kind of how the juggling came to be.
So we know that you juggle chickens. What else do you juggle?
A little bit of everything. And with the chickens, it's not just juggling with the rubber chickens. I do all sorts of experiments with, playing music with the chickens, or I fire a rubber chicken out of an air cannon and catch it in a KFC bucket on my head. So there's a lot of different things that come with the rubber chickens. In terms of different things that I juggle, I started off with juggling scarves and juggling balls. And then it moved on to, baton twirling and club juggling, which then, as my proficiency grew, I started juggling more dangerous objects like knives and fire. I think there were some sickles at one point. I tried juggling a chainsaw at one point, but I didn't really like that. So I've juggled a whole variety of things.
The chainsaw sounds a little dangerous.
Yeah, I made a promise to my mom that I wouldn't do that. She was just like, I don't know how I feel about you juggling a chainsaw on the front lawn. Can you please stop that? That was kind of the line was drawn there on where I should stop.
So you started juggling more and more dangerous items. Did you ever get hurt doing that?
A couple times, not terribly hurt, but there's always a danger. Even if you're juggling just regular plastic clubs, you can hit yourself in the face and get bruises pretty good. The biggest injury I think I've gotten from my performances, one of my finales of my show is I light my hands on fire and juggle knives. And one time, these special kind of gloves to do the trick, and the fuel had gotten through the glove. It actually lit my hand on fire while I was juggling in a show. And I didn't realize that I had lit my hand on fire. There's the adrenaline of the show happening. And you don't realize what's happening until afterwards. You're just like, oh, that felt hotter than normal. It's like, oh, geez, I burned myself pretty good on the side of my hand. But they're few and far between. You take a lot of safety precautions. I've taken safety classes. I have, insurance that covers me. I have, fire permits. And so I've learned a lot about fire safety in general. So, over a 20-year career, the major injuries are few and far between. Maybe a small neck here or a bruise there, but nothing too bad except for that one.
Wow. In addition to juggling chickens, knives, chainsaws, and anything else that is able to be juggled, do you do any other things in your shows?
I do. One of the things that I do is I do a show called the Rubber Chicken Show. And the idea with that is everybody knows what a rubber chicken is, but nobody really knows what to do with them or what they're really for. And so I try to explore that possibility a little bit. So I do ball spinning on the beaks of rubber chickens. I've learned to fine tune rubber chickens so that I can play music on those squawking chickens. I've launched them from air cannons and all sorts of stuff. And then, yeah, I just explore different avenues. I can play music by spinning a ping pong ball at a xylophone. It's just a variety of strange skills that I've learned over the years.
So, Greg, how many shows do you usually do a year?
Under normal circumstances, it tends to fall somewhere between 200 and 300 shows a year. A lot of the state fairs and festivals that I perform at, I typically will do 3 or sometimes 4 shows in a day over the course of a 10-day festival or longer. So over the course of the year, it factors out to be somewhere between 200 and 300 shows a year.
Do you travel nationally and internationally for shows, or do you tend to stay local?
It all depends, but yes, I do travel internationally with my show. To date, I've done probably, I haven't counted recently, but it's definitely over 30 different countries that I've been able to perform in. I've gone over to Japan and China for longer contracts. I was in Japan for a little over 2 months on 2 separate contracts. I've been 30 different countries performing either via cruise ship travel or being invited to perform at these international festivals. And my main bread and butter with the traveling is the county and state fairs across America. And then the international stuff comes up usually once or twice a year.
So, out of all the places that you traveled to, what was your favorite?
But I've had quite a few favorites actually for different reasons. Japan was definitely a highlight because I got to spend so much time over there that I really feel like I got to build and grow a community of friends over in Japan when I was there. I was there for 2.5 months over 2 years in a row. And so that was really rewarding to be able to be part of the Japanese culture and learn and see how things were. I've also had some really rewarding experiences performing it over in Fiji was another favorite place where everybody views Fiji as this tourist mecca island destination, but there's actually a very developing nation side to Fiji where the native Fijian people live, and so I was invited to go perform for that side of the island, and it was really an interesting dynamic to see like, oh, here's the side that the everybody sees on this side is this pristine beaches and the huts on the beach type thing versus here's a developing nation that's just grateful to have this kind of entertainment coming to their side of the island. And so that was a very rewarding experience as well.
Up here in our neck of the woods, fall fairs are a very popular venue to attend, pretty much September through November. But almost all of them have been canceled due to COVID-19. Do you still plan on going to fairs for the rest of this year, or do you have other options available?
Well, that's a good question. Unfortunately, a lot of the fairs and festivals across the country have been affected by COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're facing. So a lot of the fairs and festivals have just been outright canceled, and that goes for the majority of my season. I'm normally booked through late fall of 2020, and all of my county and state fairs have been canceled for 2020. And my next fair on schedule as of right now is not until April of 2021, where they're talking about things starting to emerge. And even that's questionable at some point because I'm seeing some January and February fairs already announcing that they're canceling.
So, you mentioned that you don't have a fair booked until April of next year. Do you do other kind of shows like birthday parties or anything like that? And is it hard to book shows with everything that's going on, or even in general before COVID? Was it hard for you to book shows?
Yeah, I always tell people that 90% of my job as an entertainer is looking for a job. So I spend a good portion of my week when I'm not performing sending emails, sending inquiries, making phone calls, trying to book those jobs. And I try to throw as much information out into the world as I can through various sources that hopefully enough things will stick and I'll my year. And it's tended to work every year up until this year. And COVID has definitely affected that. And, as of right now, I'm not really leaving the house very much for live in person shows just because of safety reasons and distance protocols and all that stuff. I started doing birthday parties when I was first performing, but I haven't done a whole lot of birthday parties over the past 10 or 15 years. And even now, you might want to be practicing social distancing on that. I've mostly been working from home, working on other side projects, back burner projects that I have, and also trying to create content virtually. I've been trying to create virtual shows to sell to libraries that are doing their summer reading programs virtually, where normally I would go and perform at a library event if it fits into my show schedule, fit into these summer reading programs and perform at some events like that. And a lot of that stuff has switched virtually. And so there's some corporate events that are happening virtually. There are library shows that are happening virtually. As school switches to a virtual learning system for now, I wouldn't be surprised to see if they're offering some sort of virtual performances or virtual interactive things for the kids. It's a whole new world that we're entering right now with the online virtual world and social distancing. I do have one event coming up over Labor Day weekend that did not cancel in all of this, and that will be my first in-person live event in about 6 months. And there's a lot of things in place with that to make it happen, where there are barriers set up, there's social distancing set up, there's all sorts of stuff. But I'll be up in Virginia over Labor Day weekend for my first live event, and maybe my only live event of 2020.
Wow, that's pretty amazing that it's your first live event, and good luck with that.
I know. It's interesting to say that, like, this 3-day event over Labor Day weekend was supposed to be a blip on my summer tour, and now it has become my entire summer tour.
That's pretty incredible. Everyone knows the term struggling actor. How did you break into the entertainment business, and did you find it to be difficult?
It is definitely a difficult field. You need to get a thick skin because you'll get a lot of rejection. And the way I kind of broke into it, because it is there is that struggling actor mentality. When you tell people that you're a full time performer, they say, "Hey, so what's your real job? What are you doing to make real money?" And it is that constant stigma you have to kind of fight against, because you'll get a lot of rejection. You'll get a lot of people saying, "Oh, you can't do that," and it's about perseverance and kind of pushing through and not always just taking no for an answer, or you can't do that for an answer. And so to break into it, I started street performing in Boston back in the 1990s. In the early 2000s, I moved out to California with the intent that I wanted to be a full time performer. And they had a street performer program out there that ran year round that I could work on my show. And just by doing the amount of shows that I was doing out there, I would start to get invited to private events or corporate events. Like after my shows that I was doing on the stage out there, people would come up and say, "Oh, here's my business card. We have a company party. We have a holiday party." And I was working various part-time jobs to make ends meet. I was performing as much as I could, but I was working either for I worked for FedEx briefly, I worked for coffee shops briefly, whatever I had to do to make ends meet. And at one point, there came a point where I was starting to get offered these fairs and festivals. I started getting like a fair or a festival, and that fair or festival would pay me more for that one week that I might make at an entire month of salary working for the coffee shop or whatever else I was doing to make ends meet. I had to take that leap of faith. I hit that point where I'm just like, it's either make or break, and I'm gonna take that leap to do this. Every year somehow worked out, and every year somehow got a little bit better. Where my first year I might get one fair or two fairs, and then the next year I got four fairs, and then I got seven fairs, then I got 10 fairs. Then it was like, oh, I can maintain. If as long as I can keep on maintaining with this, it will work out.
So now that you're not doing in-person shows and you said you have some side hustles going on, do you teach any juggling classes? Because I assume that could be something that you could do virtually or online and obviously in person when
Hmm.
you can be in person?
Well, I haven't done teaching juggling online, and a lot of the stuff that I'm doing are, ideas or projects that I've had over the past 3 or 4 or more years. So the things that I'm working on as kind of like my side hustle were things that I thought about trying to pivot to do anyways. One of the things that I'm working on is I really wanted to go into speaking and coaching for corporations and people in general who want some coaching advice of how to follow a path or to have that strength to conquer through blocks they may be facing. So yeah, I have not taught juggling online. I have taught juggling classes when I do live events, or if I do a corporate event, I might do a breakout session where we have a juggling lesson, because there's something about the hand-eye coordination and being able to focus and think about things that you can use towards a teaching moment, one of those aha, make your brain click moments. I have not done virtual juggling lessons, but I think that could work to create some sort of virtual or online courses.
The corporate aspect of your career is very interesting. How long did it take you to become known in the industry?
It's a constant build, really. As things build and grow, word of mouth spreads. I think that the entertainment world, you can have stuff out there in terms of online marketing, or you call people, you let people know, but the entertainment industry is really a industry of relationships, and so it's a matter of connecting with people, and it builds and grows based on that. It's an ever evolving process. It's not that, oh, I suddenly broke through. It's just like it takes years to build up to make those connections. So I think I'm still in the process of making those connections and building and growing.
Well, that's great, and I'm sure you'll continue to grow and build and make more connections that'll help you out in the future. So I know your show itself is a one man show where you're doing the juggling or the entertainment, but do you have any sort of team working with you to do social media, advertising, reaching out to people, anything like that? Or do you do everything yourself?
Yeah, it's kind of a one man operation. You wear so many different hats, and this is not just as an entertainer, but anybody who's self employed in general. You have to wear all of those hats yourself. So it's a full time job looking for a job. 90% of it is looking for work. And so I am my own social media manager. I am my own marketing person. I am my own booking person. I do outsource things where I can, where I don't have the expertise. So, I have hired graphic artists over the years. I have hired web designers. I've never hired a social media team to do stuff, but I probably should at some point, just because it would take that off my plate. The only thing I do have is I have various agents that I work through to do the shows. So I have an agent for cruise ships. I have an agent for the college market. I have an agent for fairs and festivals. And so that's kind of my team. Is like every week I check in with the cruise agent and say, okay, here's what I'm available for. Is there any leads or anything coming through? But other than that, I would probably say about 90% of the job, you have to kind of do it yourself. You wear all the different hats.
Our listeners really want to know, is Greg Frisbee your real name or a stage name? And do you do any tricks with frisbees?
Greg Frisbee is my real name. Growing up with a name like Frisbee is obviously interesting. As a kid, you get picked on for a name like Frisbee. And then as you get older, people are like, oh, Frisbee, that's the coolest name ever. And so I get asked that a lot if it's my real name, and it is. And I guess it was just natural to go into some sort of entertainment industry with a last name like Frisbee. I do not do any tricks with Frisbees in the show. And that was a conscious decision that I made when I was starting out. I was just like, oh, I don't really want to do anything with Frisbees. I don't, it's just my last name. And even when I was first starting out, I was like, oh, maybe I should create a stage name for myself. And I was trying to create a different name for myself before I realized that Greg Frisbee is a great stage name. So, but juggling frisbees in the show, like I said, it was a conscious choice not to do it. For the first probably 10 years of performing, I decided I did not want to do anything with frisbees. And then about 10 years in, I was like, oh, maybe I should do something with frisbees. But then I could never really quite figure out what I wanted to do with them, because you could juggle them, but it's like, oh, that's not really interesting. And then I thought, well, maybe I can spin them, like learn some frisbee spinning tricks. But I already do so much stuff with ball spinning, and when you're spinning balls on your fingers or doing all these transfers and stuff, that's much larger and more visual than a flat disc on your finger. Especially from a stage point of view, I don't even think people would see a frisbee spinning, and so just yeah, I kind of abandoned the idea of putting frisbees into the show without having it be a super interesting way to do it. And I haven't quite figured out if I'm going to put frisbees in the show, how I would use them. That would be interesting.
I mean, you could always light them on fire
That could flaming frisbees might be, yeah.
or put your face on them and then just throw them out to the crowd.
Yeah, I thought that is one thing I did think about. Is like, oh, I could have the official Greg Frisbee as a thing that people could purchase at the end of the show, and somehow do something with them or toss them out into the crowd, and the Frisbee would just say Greg on it. It wouldn't say Greg Frisbee because it's the official Greg Frisbee.
So, what are some of the ups and downs that you have faced in the entertainment business?
The ups and downs are there's always the constant uncertainty of like, oh, maybe this is my last job. There are so many highs that you get from performing, getting to perform in front of hundreds or thousands of people, feeling that connection and interacting and the cheers and all that stuff. It's those magical moments that make those downs easier to manage, because the downs are sometimes like right now, for instance, it's like, oh, my last gig was in March. Yeah, end of February. And I had this whole summer planned. I was supposed to be on the road. Right now it's the middle of August as we record this, and I was supposed to be on my summer tour. I was supposed to be traveling across America right now, and it's like, oh, because of a global pandemic, like my work is just gone. Yeah, so that's one of those downs you have to face. It's like, oh, okay, all of that work has just stopped. Well, what are you going to do now? Yeah, how are you going to stay busy? How are you going to stay productive? How are you going to keep your spirits up? What are you going to work on to get through this? And so you need that kind of determination and that drive to say, like, hey, even when I'm down, even when I'm knocked down, even when the job's just suddenly stopped for the first time in 20 years, I'm not going to stop being who I am and doing what I do, because this is what I do. And you do have to face those ups and downs, because sometimes the downs are pretty down.
We all know that this isn't a normal time with the pandemic, but let's pretend that we are all back to normal and COVID 19 didn't exist. Is the Frisbee Show your full time job?
It is. Yeah. I mean, this is really what I do. It's not just the Frisbee Show. It's like I said, there's the Rubber Chicken Show. I'm also working on speaking and coaching, and that's a whole separate project. But being a self-employed person in the entertainment industry is my full-time job, and it's also who I am. After 20 years, like I don't think I could go out and get a job at a department store, or to go back to a shipping company, or try to start a whole new career where it's like, this over 20 years of experience, this is what I do. So yeah, this is my full-time job, and even when there's no work coming in, it's still my full-time job.
So we know that COVID has affected your entertainment business and you're not currently doing any, well, I guess you have one, but not really doing any live shows. How else has the COVID affected you?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of really positive things that have come out of it. And one of the things is just that ability to slow down. It's always that go, go, go hustle mentality, have to be fighting for the next job, have to be out there working, have to be out there pushing to do this, to do that. Through COVID-19, it's kind of a forced break. It's a forced reset to kind of clear your mind. And so, even without the live shows, I've been trying to stay productive and work on those side projects, those back burner projects, try to create new ideas. Because I have notebooks filled with ideas of like, oh, this would be great to work on someday, or this would be great. And those notebooks just start to collect dust after a few years, and it's fun to kind of go through those notebooks and be like, oh, that was a good idea, or oh, I forgot that I wrote that. And let's just enjoy this moment for, with all the difficulties that we're facing with COVID, let's look at what is positive that's still happening as a result. You're getting that sense of, your friendships, your community, your family. I feel like, even though a lot of us are out of work and we're struggling and we're trying to figure out the next move, there's also a new sense of connectivity with my friends and family that maybe had been lost over the years, because it was, oh, Greg's always traveling, Greg's never around, he'll get in touch with us when he's home. Now it's every couple of days I'm on a phone call with some friends, or I'm doing FaceTimes, or trying to just, have that connection and that community still, and just to be available for people.
This is an interesting question. Can you tell us about your involvement with sheep theory and what is that all about?
So, sheep theory is kind of the direction I'm going with the speaking project. Sheep theory came up about, this is one of those back burner projects that's been sitting in a notebook dormant for about 6 years. And over the past 2 years, this actually started before the COVID pandemic. I started to shift towards wanting to be a motivational speaker and coach to try to help people to block through. I have a belief about being your authentic self. And so the idea of sheep theory was, and the tagline of sheep theory is thinking outside the flocks. And we all have flocks that we kind of get gravitated towards, whether it's our family or our friends or our job or whatever. We have all these outside influences kind of pushing on us from all these different directions. And deep down, I think a lot of us know who we are or who we want to be. And so the idea of sheep theory is it's a speaking and coaching platform that I'm trying to work on and develop to kind of push that message of authenticity, to be your more authentic self and to find whatever those self-imposed limitations are to try to break through to open those doors for you.
Well, that being said, did you write the book Sheep Theory?
That is one of the things that I'm working on, and that book is almost done. Actually, I just finished a draft of it, and it's one of the things that I'm hoping to get published or put out there in the world in the next month or two. And it's a book. It's about sheep theory, thinking outside the flocks, and it's 50 ways to a more creative outlook. And so there's these different tips and exercises that you can do from home or from your office or from wherever that you might be feeling a block or a creative block to try to push through. So it's kind of a self-help kind of manual. It's either going to be released as an ebook or a published book, but it's something that I've been working on over the past 6 months or so.
Well, you'll have to let us know when it gets published so we can get a copy.
Absolutely.
Yes, I'm very interested in reading it. What advice would you give to an entertainer that is just starting out?
Let's see. That's a good question. Some advice that I would give somebody just starting out. The advice that I would give is to not give up. It's a process, and I think a lot of people give up too soon. That they go out and they try something and they quit before they might be on the edge of that breakthrough moment, and there's like, oh, this is too hard, and I give up. And as I've mentioned earlier, 90% of it is just, put as much stuff out there as you can. You got to wear all these different hats. You have to throw enough stuff against the wall. You have to be working on the craft, be practicing, try to get in front of audiences as much as you can. Because it's really, you can learn from books on the acting and the performing, but a lot of it also has to come from doing. You have to get out there and do it. So if you're in school and you want to be an actor, audition for the play, audition for the musical, audition for something, get involved in the media department or some sort of creative aspect that you can start to just be doing it. That's how you build the skills, is by implementing the things that you learn or that you read.
So if at first you fail, try again.
Exactly. Keep on trying.
So were you in musicals or plays?
I feel like, I want to go back to my high school English teacher, and I had a music teacher in high school, and just say, thank you, because without you, I don't know that I would be on this path. Um, like I said, I grew up as a very shy kid. And so the idea of me being on stage terrified me. The idea of me being a performer terrifies me. If I were to go back and tell my 15-year-old self that I was going to be a full-time performer, I would laugh and be like, no way. But, there was this high school teacher, and it's the only musical that I've ever done was this one in high school where for whatever reason, he approached me after class one day. He's like, "Hey, Greg, I want you to try out for this musical." They were doing Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado. I didn't have a lead role. I was just a background singer, like this thing. It's just like, first of all, I've never performed on stage in my life. I've never sang in front of anybody in my life. And this teacher somehow kind of like pushed me into it. And for whatever reason, I said yes. My junior or senior year in high school, but there was something about that started to kind of like break me out of my shell. And so, I took some acting classes when I went to college, and I took some TV production classes and audio production classes. But the only stage time I ever got was that one in high school.
Wow, and look at you now.
Right.
So, how important to your business is social media?
It's very important, although I think that people focus on the numbers too much. We all want millions of followers. Use social media to be like, oh, I have hundreds of thousands of people following me. And sure, the numbers are important, and surely I would like to have more numbers than I do. But social media is very important, even if you only have 50 followers or 100 followers. Or I think on my On my Facebook, I have a few thousand, and then on Instagram, I think I have 1,000. But like one person that's on your social media that sees you might be like, "Oh, we think you'd be great for this. We think you're the." So I think it's important to have those social media profiles because it's not always about the number of people. It's about the number of quality people that are on your feeds. And so I think it's important to be updating content and be posting stuff, especially stuff when it's relevant, even if it might not reach the masses or reach everybody you want it to. It is important to have the stuff out there, and social media is definitely a part of the game.
Where can we follow you and get more information about your shows?
The main one that I have is at Greg Frisbee Show, and that's for Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. At Greg Frisbee Show will find me and then connect through the other ones through there. I have a variety of different ones for different projects. I have one Rubber Chicken Show is another one. Sheep Theory, because that's still a relatively new thing. I haven't been putting a lot of effort into the social media yet. But at Greg Frisbee Show is probably the safest one. And then I post things out there saying, hey, check out this, check out that. So people can follow me on social media through that.
Well, that's great. We'll be sure to follow you, of course. Now, let's get personal.
All right.
Have you ever met anyone famous while doing a show, and who was it if you did?
I have met a few people over the years, either at a show or behind the scenes at a show. My most famous and memorable one would be Robin Williams. I got to spend about 2 hours with him behind in the green room at a theater. And I wasn't even performing at that theater. I was actually there helping another performer friend of mine who was doing a show at the theater. And Robin Williams showed up in the back green room, and he decided he was going to do a set, like an unannounced set. So we were just kind of hanging out in the green room, and I just got to hang out with Robin Williams for 2 hours, just talking about life and his love of bike riding and all sorts of stuff. And that was an amazing opportunity because it was probably, I think, a year or two after that he passed away. So it was just over the past few years. I've had the opportunity to probably the most recent famous one was about a little over a year ago, maybe I guess about 2 years ago. Steph Curry came to one of my shows with his daughter. I was performing at an event out in California, and he came to one of my shows. And I didn't even really know who he was, but the guy who had hired me was a producer. He's like, "Hey, just so you know, Steph Curry is out in the audience watching your show with his daughter." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, I've had a few brushes with people, and then the weirdest, I wouldn't say that they're a celebrity, but when I was performing at that event in Fiji, Fiji had been taken over by a military coup at one point. I'm not sure what the status is now, but the leader of Fiji came to my show and wanted to take a picture with me for the show. It was a very strange conversation because here's this guy who had taken over the government via a military coup. He had to point out, like, hey, don't call out that we're in the audience and don't use my family as volunteers because there might be people trying to assassinate. Okay.
Wow, that's a really interesting story. And that is absolutely fabulous that you got to meet Robin Williams. That's really cool.
Yeah, definitely one of the highlights of my life was being able to spend, like I said, it was close to a 2 hour conversation as we just hung out backstage. And I wish I had gotten a picture, but it was one of those moments where it's just like it would be weird to be like, hey, we're having this great conversation. Do you mind if I just pull out my camera for a quick selfie with you? Like it just didn't seem appropriate. So the only corroboration I have is my friend who was also there with me. And he tells the story. He's like, "Oh, we were backstage hanging out with Rob Williams."
I'm a little jealous, I have to say, just a little jealous right now.
Whatever made you want to light your hands on fire?
Um, I get asked that question a lot. It's not a super exciting answer. I mean, I guess it's an interesting. The way it came to be was when I started working on my show and wanting to be a full time performer. A lot of people juggle knives, and a lot of people juggle fire. And I was in a conversation with a magic shop owner out in San Francisco, and we were just kind of, swapping stories and, coming up with ideas. And I said that I was trying to come up with a finale. I was trying to come up with some sort of new thing, something that could be mine. I said, well, is there a way to combine fire and knives together? And so we just started kind of like, well, what about having knives that are on fire? What about having, fire torches with blades sticking out of them? And somehow the idea came out. I was like, well, what if you were on fire while you juggled knives. And it kind of came out was how would we do that? How, like, what would I do with that? We kind of brainstormed the idea, and then we kind of said, well, if you take this special kind of glove and you use fuel and you do this and you do that, like, you should play around with that and see how it works out. And that kind of became my signature finale for a handful of years. I did a variety of different things, from straight jacket escapes to whatever. But now suddenly it's like, oh, like, I am the fire hands juggler. Like, I light my hands on fire and juggle knives. Yeah, that's kind of how that came to be. It was a conversation in a magic shop one day, and then I started asking around to other performers, people who had been around for 20, 30 or more years. And I said, hey, do you know anybody has anybody ever done this before? And they were just like, no. And we wish we had thought of that. Like, what the heck? And so that's how it came to be. And it kind of was like, oh, like, nobody's done this before. Here's a thing that I can do that nobody's done. And now over the years, a few other people have done different things, lit their pants on fire or their shoes on fire, but yeah, there's not many people who are lighting their hands on fire and juggling knives.
I guess you could light your feet on fire and juggle with those.
You could do it all. Let's stick with the hands, I guess.
You mentioned that you swallow fire. How does that taste?
Like chicken.
What?
I guess everything tastes like chicken.
Burnt chicken?
That's right. Yeah, it gives you a little bit of heartburn, though. So with the fire, it doesn't really have a taste at all, as long as the torches are fairly clean. I mean, other than the soot from the torch. But the fire burns. It's very hot, but it doesn't really have any taste to it. It's really just, you have to learn how to breathe a certain way while you're doing it, that you don't inhale the fumes or the fuel or the fire, because that's incredibly dangerous. But the torch itself doesn't really have any distinguishable flavor.
Carrie and I would love to come to one of your shows. So do you have any plans to come to Connecticut?
I do not at the moment have any plan to be in Connecticut, but you never know. As I'm working, I've done a bunch of stuff in Connecticut over the years. I had a little bit of a library tour, again, with these summer reading programs. I did about 7 or 8 of them over the course of one week a few summers ago. So you never know when I'll be able to get to Connecticut. There are a lot of those fall fairs happen out there in Connecticut, and that's usually a big thing. I would say that 2020 for fairs is probably not going to happen, but I would love to focus on getting my show up there in 2021, whether it's in the spring or the fall of next year. But there's always, there's college shows, there's different events, and I will definitely keep you posted when I have a live event up in Connecticut.
Well, that would be great because I'd love to see you perform again in person. What is your favorite stunt out of all the stunts that you do?
It's probably the stupidest stunt, but it is my favorite. With the rubber chicken show that I'm doing, it's kind of become the main show that I book for fairs and festivals, just because it fits that agricultural theme that a lot of them have. I don't know why the rubber chickens fit that theme, but they do. And so my favorite stunt, and it kind of came up as a fluke. It was a routine that I created for my regular juggling show that became its own show now, is where I launch a rubber chicken from an air cannon. Actually, I have a volunteer launch a rubber chicken from an air cannon, basically a modified T-shirt gun, and I fire the rubber chicken and catch it in a KFC bucket helmet. And then I reverse the roles and I fire it at a volunteer, and then they catch it on their head. And it's a really fun, ridiculous stunt to have a rubber chicken with a little Superman cape, and he flies through the air and catch him on your head.
Besides being an entertainer, what else do you like to do?
Like movies and music, and in terms of hobbies, it's interesting that almost my hobbies always become my job for some reason. So I started off as juggling and magic as a hobby, and it became my job as an entertainer. I've kind of, over the course of the quarantine, I've started working on puppet building, which was a skill I had a long, long time ago, that I've started to rework and build like Muppet style puppets. And now that's turning into a potential avenue for stuff. One thing that I do like doing, and it's not really entertainer related, but it still fits within, like, it's a useful skill as an entertainer, as I really enjoy like audio and video production stuff. So I like creating little silly videos and working on the editing. So most of the things that I do for hobbies or for fun are still things that would be implementable to my show. Other than that, I really enjoy travel. It's one of the reasons why I do what I do as an entertainer, is the ability to travel on other people's money, essentially. I love the idea of just traveling and exploring different cultures and traveling the world when we can. I don't like being in one place for too long. I always like to be exploring different cultures. That's one thing that I really do enjoy.
Well, travel does seem very awesome. Not right now, but in general. So you have a son. Have you taught him to juggle and does he enjoy it?
I've tried. I've tried. It's one of those things that I think it was so commonplace for him that he doesn't have any interest in juggling. Either that or I tried to push it on him too young and he just kind of boycotted the whole thing. He definitely has the entertainer gene in him, and I'm not quite sure what direction he's going to go. He's 16 right now, and he's showing interest in wanting to be an actor. He wants to go into the acting realm or somehow into video or film production. He's really interested in that aspect. But yeah, I tried to teach him how to juggle for years and years. I'm like, hey, just learn how to juggle. Like it'll be fun. Like we could be passing clubs and doing this and doing that. And his answer is always like, that's your thing. You do that. He's had some minor interest in magic every now and then. He's like, hey, I learned a new magic trick, or I learned this card trick, or can you help me with this thing? But really, he's really interested in the acting and performing, and not so much in the juggling or magic.
Well, maybe we'll be seeing him on stage too.
Yeah, I mean, in his ideal world, I think he'd be some sort of famous movie star in one of those hit TV shows.
Well, you never know.
But you never know. I keep on telling him the same thing like I tell everybody. It's like, just get out there and start doing it. The movie acting isn't going to happen overnight. Start with stage shows, start with local stuff. Start auditioning for everything you can. Take the classes, do the stuff.
Out of all your shows, which one stands out the most?
In terms of where I've performed or in terms of which shows?
Maybe a location and something really memorable happened, like the Fiji show you just told us about?
One of the most memorable times I had that stands out, the Fiji one was definitely one, but my first time going to China was really interesting. I've been to China a few times, but the first time I was in China was in a rural southern city in China. And, by Chinese standards, it was a small city because there was only, I think, 1.7 million people that lived there. They didn't get a lot of Western tourists there. And this was an international clowning and performing festival. There was 3 or 4 stages of entertainment, and I was one of 60 performers from around the world that was invited to come and perform at this event. They didn't know what to expect because they had never had anything like this in that part of China or anything like it in terms of like this kind of international clowning and performing festival. And so this could be a bust, and it's a 7-day festival. And on the first day of the festival, before we even started the festival, 500,000 people lined the street, and they had to throw an impromptu Macy's like Thanksgiving style day parade with like these makeshift floats to like, bring the performers into the festival park grounds. And then every show of every day, there was probably 5 or 6 thousand people at every show every day, and it was the closest thing to being famous that I think I've ever felt, where the time you get off stage, people would ask you, it's like, oh, you're from California? Yep. And you're a performer? Yep. Do you know Brad Pitt? Like, are you neighbors? Like this total surreal kind of experience where, yeah, definitely that would be one that stands out to me. There was a book that came out as a result of that festival. I think it just circulated around the clowning performing world, but there's this book that exists. The Chinese government issued a commemorative stamp for our festival. It was just a very, very strange and surreal experience, but that's definitely the one over my entire career that probably stands out. It's like the Woodstock of the clowning and performing world.
Wow, that's very exciting. So, Greg, is there anything else you would like to share with us about juggling and the entertainment business?
Well, I would say that if you have the inkling to do it or you want to do it, is get out there and do it, because you'll never know if it's something you really want to do until you try. And I think that in general, people should try to follow their dreams. We live in a remarkable time with so much information available at your fingertips. And if you want to learn how to juggle, if you want to learn magic, if you want to learn how to be a performer, we have those resources that are there. And I think that anybody can do anything that they want to with that perseverance and the belief in themselves that they can do it. And I say go out there and do it and stick with it and give it a go.
Well, thank you, Greg, for coming on our show and offering all this valuable insight on having a career in the entertainment business and all the ups and downs. I know I found it all to be very interesting, and I know our listeners will too. I can't wait to see you perform again. We are all about humans helping humans, and we hope you'll join us again for another episode.
Absolutely.
And please check out Greg Frisbee and the Frisbee Show at www.frisbeeshow.com and consider him for your next event. This podcast is brought to you by mybookcart.com, a textbook buyback service where you can sell back your books for fast cash. Here's to another informative episode of College Talks and More.
Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel to stay up to date on any new episodes.
Check out our blog and be an insider to receive our newsletters so you can follow anything and everything College Talks and My Book Cart.